We're now going to take a look at the space between words and letters. And in traditional typography, the space between letters is known as tracking, and there's also something called kerning as well, which is the space between two individual letters. Tracking is the overall space. But first of all, before we get into that, let's look at the space between words. So we do have the ability through CSS to change our word spacing. And for this, I'm going to just change my word spacing to 0.25 and as you can see, when I do that, up at the top here we saw it just jump out a little bit further because there was a bigger space between here. So if I comment that out, we can see the space jumps up, and that will be the same for all of our headings as well, including this heading here, because we've done it on H1, H2, H3, and we can see that we have the ability to put that extra spacing in. Now it's probably something that you don't want to put in on regular body text, but it's something that you may want to put in for extra legibility on larger text such as headings. So it's always useful to look at that and take a look at what you can do with that. Now, tracking as a whole across all letters is called letter spacing. So let's look at that. So we do letter spacing. And if we want to bring it in slightly and bring the size of our letters in to make it a little bit tighter, we're going to work with some very small units indeed. So if I do minus 0.1, you'll see that is quite dramatic. So 0.1, which you think, oh, that's really small, made these letters come in incredibly. So in fact, 0.01 is something that you would actually be more likely to use. So if we take that out, we can see it's just brought in and tightened up the letters there. So that's letter spacing. Now, the other thing that typographers are generally used to doing in print design is something called kerning. And the only way really to do this on the web is to do something like this and put a span around two elements. So let's look at that. So I'm going to put around the G and the U on guide. And I'm going to look at how we can bring those in. So let's give that a class as well. I'm going to call it kern, because that's what we're doing here. We're kerning. So let's now create the class for that. I'll just pop it in here. We're going to use our letter spacing from before, and that's not going to do any different. But if I did like 0.5, we can see that it now affects those there, and it brings in the I as well around it. So in actual fact, what I needed to do was put that just around the G, like so, just to bring the U in to the size of the G. It's something that gets done on typography a lot. I've done it extreme there. It's too much, but it's just to show that you can do it on the web, but it is a lot of work because you've got to go into all your headings and look at where type might be a little bit further apart, like such as the E against the W, because of the slant that we've got there on the E. So again, we could look at that if I wanted to go in here and do the exact same thing on the W, and that's just brought it in a little bit. And you can see it needs to come in a lot on that one because of the way it is. Let's take it off on the G, as it wasn't really needing it there. But there we go. Now we can see doing something like that, the class of kern on the W brings the E right in, and now it looks about the same distance as it is apart from the B. And that's just something that you generally see a lot when you get into larger typefaces. So there's your word spacing, your tracking or your letter spacing, and kerning, the space between two letters.